Hey, welcome to the first Friday of 2024. No nuclear war, no alien takeover. The robots didn't rise up against their human masters, and Santa Claus did not launch a coup with his elves against the entire planet while everybody was asleep on Christmas Eve. Hey, how you doing? Mr. H here with you on planet Earth. I hope you had a fantastic week, and we are going to make sure that your weekend gets off to a fantastic start. Why? Because we're talking about history, we're talking about dinosaurs, we're talking about football, the three most important things on planet Earth. Now we were talking about Rome before Christmas there, and I'm going to take a little break from the Romans for a second because for some strange reason, I have had people asking me questions about the Civil War. I have no idea why everyone suddenly got interested in the Civil War over Christmas. I thought maybe some reenactment stuff going on. They don't do that in January. You usually do it, when it's warm. So, hey, we'll talk about the Civil War and how it started because that's what everyone's asking about. Why did the war start? Why did it take so long? The North had such a huge advantage over the Confederacy. Why did it take from 1860 to 1865? Oh, yeah, I know. They started fighting in 61. I always date it back to 1860 because that's when South Carolina was the first state to leave. That's just something I like to do. We can argue about it in the comments if you like. It doesn't matter, long as we're having fun. Hey, much ado about flags. Everybody always freaks out about Confederate flags and Union flags and everything else. Hey, you see this thing over here? Yeah, right here on the left. U.S. flag and the Confederate flag. This is what they call a Confederate flag. This is the real Confederate flag over here. If it remained a nation and you had embassies, this would be the flag flying outside the embassy if the Confederacy had survived as a nation. This is the one you hear about because this is the one you saw on the battlefield all the time, the one coming straight at you or the one running away from us at Gettysburg. Yeah, so that's why that's known as a Confederate flag, whereas the other one, they call it the bleeding zebra sometimes. This is the flag you don't see very often. Some people kind of flip out about it, about the Confederate flag. There's Byzantine flags, old Russian flags, all kinds of old flags flying around. Um, if they're going to yell about flags, at least know which flag you're talking about, right? But hey, who cares? Let's go back to the Civil War, right? When people talk about the Civil War, this is what I'm thinking about. I don't see these, flags moving around on a map. I see the actual battles happening, people fighting each other, and a lot of people they get overwhelmed by all the facts and all the numbers and all the carnage, and this is how I always envision my students looking during history class, like this guy. Now, let's talk about this Civil War. Let's get the scorecard so you know who's doing what. All right, so the Union, that's USA, northern states. All right, the southern states, the Confederacy, known officially as the Confederate States of America. The Union has a federal government, states who send representatives to Washington, D.C., right? In the Confederacy, there are states who have a capital in Richmond. However, the states tend to have more autonomy than they would even in a republic like the Union. The Union is usually depicted as blue. That's the uniforms. Wore blue uniforms, look black sometimes, and occasionally end up looking red from all the dust on it. The Confederate troops, as you saw, usually didn't have any uniforms. When they did have uniforms, they were gray. Now, why were those uniforms gray? Because it's the cheapest color. You don't have to dye them or anything. But a lot of times, Confederate soldiers wearing what was considered civilian clothes at that time. Who was the president of the Union at the time? Abraham Lincoln, a big, tall guy, right? Sometimes people confuse him with the other big, tall guy, the guy running the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis. Both kind of tall, raw-boned guys, got a little beard thing going, real popular in the 1860s. Uh, Abraham Lincoln claimed Illinois as home. Jefferson Davis claimed Mississippi as his home. They're both actually born in Kentucky. Yeah, how about that? Which was a neutral state which tried to join the Confederacy. So it just seems apropos that both guys would be from a disputed state. The Union capital is Washington, D.C., the Confederate capital, Richmond, Virginia. They're about 100 miles away from each other, so lots of battles in Northern Virginia. Plus, the most Confederate industry was in that area. So there are going to be battles all over Northern Virginia any way you looked at it, right? Some famous commanders. Everybody knows Robert E. Lee from the Confederacy. Over on the Union side, the guy who beat him, Ulysses S. Grant. George McClellan was one of not the original commander in Potomac, but the second guy up. Very popular, very incompetent. Could have won the war easily at Antietam, but he bobbled the ball on that one. Who do you not see there? Yeah, somebody's going to say, Sherman. Okay, I can go with that. But who's the guy? Who's the real hero who never gets any credit? He's from Philadelphia. No, not Donovan McNabb with the Eagles. No, George Gordon Meade, right? The first guy ever beat Robert E. Lee head-to-head. Did it at Gettysburg. Ever hear about it? And what was the goal? For the Union, it was to preserve the Union, right? Because the Confederacy breaks off, your country shatters, and who knows what else? Other parts of the country could take off, right? The Confederate Party says preserve states' rights. Yeah, I don't really know about that so much. It's kind of trying to become its own country, and there's no way around the slavery issue. That's what they based their economy on. Slavery became a big issue later in the war. It was an issue in the beginning, but became an official objective later on. And I'll be honest with you, how could you not have slavery as an issue during the Civil War from day one? I mean, given the abolitionist and pro-slavery enmity and, of course, the mini-Civil War they fought in Kansas, yeah, slavery's part of it. So anyone who tries to tell you slavery wasn't part of the Civil War is, I don't know, they have they read some book somewhere else, I don't know. But nonetheless, here's the score chart there. Wants to know about the Civil War. Now, you look at the statistics, and statistically, the Union should have just mopped the floor with the Confederacy in under a year. There's no way the Confederacy could possibly win. The best case for the Confederacy is to fight to a draw and hope somebody from the outside comes in to help them, kind of like the way France helped America against the British in the Revolutionary War. So the Confederates are hoping history repeats itself. Somebody, Britain or France, comes in to help them against the Union. It never happened. In a one-on-one battle between Union and Confederacy, no chance. Look at this. 71% of the population lives in the North. Industry, manufactured goods, 92% for the Union. So it's the most manufactured goods come out of two parts in the Confederacy, either down near Birmingham or up in Northern Virginia around Richmond. So once again, there's going to be lots of fighting in Richmond and Northern Virginia. They have to defend their industry. Exports are pretty close, 56-44 for the Union. It's not a big surprise considering cotton is the main Confederate export at that time, so there's a lot of that going out. The Union, we're exporting all kinds of stuff, usually finished goods. Merchant ships, 90% of them belong to the North. No big surprise there, because the Confederacy is exporting stuff, but it's on other people's ships. The French, the British, even some ships from New York, Philly, Boston, they come in to pick up this stuff. So that's kind of, they've got the store, people come to pick it up. The miles of railroad tracks, 72% of that's in the North. The Confederacy, only 28%, and a lot of that stuff was kind of antiquated when the war started. Ironically, there was a lot of railroads in the South even before they really spread in the North, which is kind of a strange development around the 1800s. But now we're going to pick up real fast and blow past them as the century goes along. Grain production, 31% in the South, 69% in the North. And remember, that 31% there might actually be lower because you can only grow so much stuff in one spot, right? Can it be grain or is it cotton? Got to pick one or the other. Number of farms. This always seems to surprise people. I have no idea why they're surprised. 2/3 of the farms in the country are located in the North. Why are you surprised by that? Do you think every Northerner lives in a factory? Hey, we eat too, Been to Skyline? Yeah, we eat a lot. It's a lot of farms in the North, man. Not everybody works in a factory. Why they're surprised? No idea. This comes here as no surprise. Iron production, 94% in the North. Yeah, I'm surprised it's not 99. So no surprise there. 94.6 for the Union. And most of the banks, 82% are in the north, right? New York and Boston, even a little bit in D.C. is where most of the banking industry is. A lot of loans down south, and most of the Confederate banking is in Richmond. So once again, Northern Virginia becomes the battlefield. But when you look at this tail of the tape, it just looks like this thing should be over in 6 months. Ended up 4 years. So, sometimes the numbers don't tell the whole story, man. When people are determined to fight, even as badly outnumbered as the Confederacy, even with no chance of victory, yeah, they fought hard because if they couldn't win, maybe they make it bloody and nasty enough to make it a draw, which is the same as a victory. So knowing the longer this war goes on, it's the greater chance of a win for the Union because they're just going to keep bringing up new armies and smashing into the Confederacy. Sooner or later, they're going to wear the Confederacy down. At first, everyone thought this thing's going to be over. One big battle, it's over. They're going to march out of D.C., win, and storm Richmond. And of course, the Confederates thought we could beat this army of tinkerers, right? And then they're going to win one big battle in Northern Virginia and storm D.C. Now, no chance. It was never going to happen. No chance. The only chance the Confederacy had was to either hit them, it wins a battle so big and so bloody the North gave up, or just keep the war going until it turns into this long drawn out thing and it's just not worth the cost anymore. What they underestimated, of course, was Northern determination. We are going to keep our country united. We will grind you down. We have the strength, we have the numbers, and we have the determination. It just took longer than we thought. Winfield Scott was the commander-in-chief as the Civil War broke out. He had to retire. He was getting too old and too fat to ride a horse. And he came up with a strategy that nobody listened to. He sketched it out on a pizza box. No, not a pizza box, but he had this strategy. Everyone ignored it until they marched out, Battle of Bull Run, lost, and they pulled this thing back out again. It was called the Anaconda strategy. The Confederacy doesn't have much of a navy. They're dependent on imports. They send out the cotton, they get the weapons and all the stuff they need from Europe. So the Union Navy gets even bigger. At one point, it's the biggest navy in the world, and they blockade the southern coast. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. Then they keep hammering away at Richmond to pull everybody over there, and who knows, maybe get lucky and actually storm Richmond. They will at the end. And then you see the Mississippi River over here, right down the middle. See, follow the cursor. They're going to go down the Mississippi. A big army coming down this way. It's going to be Grant. Eventually, they're going to come up, take New Orleans, and cut the whole country in half. That way, the grain producing and beef producing of Texas and Louisiana and some of Oklahoma gets cut off. Because here they're growing cotton, here they're growing food. Now you got no food. And then they're going to smash their way again, cutting the Confederate piece in half again, to slice it in half, going for Savannah, another big port. They got the country chopped up 3 ways, and then they start marching north. Either going to come through Richmond through the back door if they haven't kicked down the front door already. That's how it's eventually going to work. This strategy does work because the longer this war goes on, the more stuff the Confederacy is going to run out of, and they didn't have a lot to begin with. But I'll give credit where credit's due. They put up a pretty rough fight there for 4 years. Hey, other question people had. Hey, Mr. H, how did the Europeans see the Civil War over in the U.S.? Did they ignore it? No, they were paying attention. I mean, it wasn't the first thing on the television. I mean, it had a lot of other things going on. The U.S. is not a great power at the time, but it's getting there. The closest support the Confederates had from anybody might have been Britain and might have been France, because, all the cotton. They depended on the cotton. But the one thing the French and British could not countenance, the one thing they could not accept was slavery. No way were the French and British about to intervene and shed blood to fight for slave owners. Now, the Trent affair, the British came pretty close to getting very mad at the United States over, we basically hijacked one of their ships. But there was no serious danger of a war. Nobody was going to fight for slave owners. But doesn't mean they didn't have an opinion about the war, nor did they try to take advantage of it. Because the French, British, and Spanish would actually land in Mexico to, collect some debts, and nothing we could do about it at the time. British and Spanish got their money and left. The French tried to stay and try to take over the country. That didn't work out too well. Later on, Spain would use our, shall we say, busyness to try and take over the Dominican Republic before they left again. But most countries in Europe were pro-Union. Russia was enthusiastically pro-Union. The Tsar sent a fleet to New York, another one to San Francisco in support of the Union. He really loved Abraham Lincoln. He sent him letters all the time. He even freed the serfs in Russia in 1862, a year before we officially freed the slaves over here in 1863 with the Emancipation Proclamation. So most of Europe is going to be pro-Union. Like I said, the only possible Confederate support you would have might be a little bit in France, might be a little bit in Britain, but nobody's fighting and shedding blood for slave owners. So there, now at least we know what the opening stages of the Civil War were like. I hope it answered a few questions for you. I just realized this map comes from some kind of game. I'm really liking that Greater Greece down there in the southeast corner, but, what could have been? Let's talk about what was. Let's scare the living daylights out of the fans. First time I saw this, I yelled, "What the expletive deleted is that?" Okay, that's supposed to be Allosaurus. We saw this picture show a few weeks back there. It still scares the living daylights out of me. How do you draw something like that and think it's right? So Allosaurus, this is the closer version, was like mid 20th century, 60s, 70s. You can see the upright posture. You see its head, got the bump there on the back end of it, upright, dragging the tail. And for some reason, they always colored this thing kind of rust-colored. I don't know what it was. Mid-20th century, like rust-colored Allosaurus for some reason. And of course, it's clearly a predator. It lived in the Jurassic. It may or may not have gone after sauropods, at least the smaller ones. As you can tell, it's an outdated photo with a sauropod living in a swamp somewhere. Here, another traditional mid-20th century depictions of Allosaurus up top in 1920. I don't know if he's sticking his tongue out as a piece of meat. I don't know. See, he's dragging the tail, the upright posture. You see the curve there in the back of the head. 1959, you see he's got the tail elevated, so that's something new. Maybe because it's moving, that has something to do with it. I don't know if he's rubbing his face against a rock, or he's walking past a rock, or he's trying to knock the rock down with his head. If he's trying to knock the rock down with his head, it's clearly some kind of Dallas Cowboy fan. We could just move on from there. Here's a skeleton of Allosaurus. This is in Montana, actually. So this is fairly recent. They call this one Alice, thinking it's a female Allosaurus. If it's female, it's Alice. If it's male, it's Owl. You can see it's got the tail elevated, so this is a fairly recent interpretation. It looks a lot like a Tyrannosaurus. The big difference, of course, being the size. T-Rex is bigger. And if you look at the claws, 3 claws is Allosaurus, 2 claws is Tyrannosaurus. I was at Walmart the other day, and Mrs. H was a little bit upset with me because, I saw a kid with a shirt that had Allosaurus on it, and so I bent over, curled my hands with 3 fingers, and went tromping down the aisle, growling like an Allosaurus. I thought it was funny. Thought security's going to throw me out. Hey, this is Walmart. They're not even going to notice me, man. 21st century version of Allosaurus. You can see it looks different. Hey, let's take a look over here on the left here. Something you notice. See the 3 claws? But look at the head. It's got these protrusions up over the eyes. What's that all about? That's some specimens have been found like that. It's probably for protection for its eyes, because rough and tumble, it doesn't go to a restaurant someplace. It's going to actually fight and kill whatever it's trying to eat. And over there on the right, here's something new I've noticed, at least in this century, is that remember that curve on the back of the head. Now it's kind of got this longish kind of neck. So a lot of people think it's used to reach and pull. And the thing that makes Allosaurus kind of terrifying are the teeth. Now, Tyrannosaurus rex, it bites something, the teeth come down and crushes whatever's there, rips it off and swallows. It's a reptile, doesn't really chew. Allosaurus, being smaller, still big, but smaller, the teeth are somewhat different. Instead of biting and crushing, these teeth bite down, and it's like a saw. It starts cutting into things. That might be even worse. And then rips the meat off of whatever's still alive and swallows it. And like a snake, we're not sure, but some people theorize, like a snake, it could extend its head forward, and the jaws come apart a little bit. It can swallow huge pieces of meat. It's actually bigger than its mouth. So It's not T-Rex, but it's still some bad news here. Here's what we do agree on. Everyone argues because they got to have something to argue about. Allosaurus, meaning other lizard, because it's a lizard and it's something else. Lived in the late Jurassic and it's pretty big. The stance, as you can see, it's much different than you saw the early depictions. You can see it's running. The tail is uplifted, and we have the lack of the back head bump. So this is what the current view on what Allosaurus probably looked like and probably how it moved. It is a very fast, agile, active sort of predator. If this thing sees you, it's probably all over. Yeah, you're going to be lunch. And remember what I told you about the teeth, right? Oh, man, it's like a saw. Oh, God. Ugh. It's got the heebie-jeebies just thinking about that. Hey, how about a baby Allosaurus calendar? Who's up for that, man? Looking for investors here, huh? This one, again, we see the thing with the feathers over here, or maybe even fuzz over there on the left. Here's what they think an Allosaurus baby might look like. We're not sure if the mother actually cared for it or not. You saw Jurassic Park where they had a baby T-Rex cared for, and juveniles are hunted alongside the adults. Allosaurus probably operated the same way, but we really don't know 100% because we've never found skeletons of juveniles and adults close to each other. So who knows? We'll find out one day, just not today. Hey, here's a picture of Allosaurus in the very first dinosaur movie. Yep, the very first dinosaur movie back in 1925 was The Lost World. As you can see, that mid-20th century depiction there with the curved head does have 3 claws. Upright posture, we'll give them that. It's 1925. They're working on it. Hey, here's one from 1 million BC. I think they made this like in the 70s. All right, first of all, it says Allosaurus and Tumac. They got it backwards. Tumac is clearly the caveman. Allosaurus is Allosaurus, if you want to call it that. It looks kind of like it has the head of a cobra and the body of a theropod of some kind. Upright again, thing with the head. 1 million years BC. Was that in the 60s, maybe? I don't know, before my time. And no, cavemen did not exist the same time as dinosaurs. I don't know who promotes this, but whoever it is, you're doing a great disservice, and you better not run into me, because I will let you know real quick that dinosaurs and cavemen did not exist together. At least not yet. We'll see how this Jurassic Park stuff turns out. Hey, we even got evolution of Allosaurus toys, right? Look at this. 1900, upright, dragging the tail. 1960s, kind of sloped forward. Not sure what's up with the back. Is that because I think it has spines or just how they made it in the mold? I don't know. Got our 2000s Allosaurus over here with the tail elevated. And there we are in 2020s. Again, you see the neck we were talking about earlier. So, I don't know. Even the toys, they got to march with the times, right? Got to make it look realistic. Because if it's not realistic, it's just an antique. I thought this was a cool picture. Right, off to lunch. That's where I'm going after this. I'm going to lunch. He's having fun eating something. It looks like it's been there a while. We've got the old scavenger versus hunter debate. Teeth like that, yeah, I think it's definitely a hunter. But if there's something dead and it hasn't rotted too much, yeah, like every other animal on planet Earth, it's not above a free meal. And I can see his buddy over there in the distance looking on, waiting for his turn. Looks kind of like a buffet line somewhere in Ohio, but hey, it's okay. I love everybody, even Ohio. How about those Browns? They made the playoffs. Oh, the world can be terrifying at times. Speaking of terrifying, let's talk about what the Steelers did to Seattle. The Seahawks are terrified. They will never look towards the Three Rivers area again without feeling fear. Pittsburgh just tore through Seattle. The score is 30-23. It wasn't that close. And they did the old ground and pound thing over here. You see Najee Harris there just pushing the Seattle Seahawk out of the way. And Pittsburgh just dominated. I mean, one sportscaster said the Steelers came in, pushed the Seahawks around, took their lunch money. You know, just tore through the Seahawks. And you can't help but wonder, where was this team earlier when they lost in New England and Arizona? Where were they? I don't know, but at least this team showed up, and we actually have an outside shot at the playoffs. I call it the old smash and bash attack. Man, we had Harris dragging an entire Seattle Seahawk team picture into the end zone. We had a Warren over here just tearing off big yards. Nothing Seattle could do could possibly stop us. Just sat on the ground, tore away. Seattle's supposed to be a contender. Didn't look like it on Sunday. Now we got the Steelers and Ravens coming up. The Ravens have won the division, so they might be resting a lot of people. For the Steelers to get in the playoffs, they got to win, obviously, and a lot of other things have to happen. We'll take a look at it. And, of course, TJ Watt, we're going to need you, man. All right? Need you to make lots of tackles. Maybe a touchdown or two would help. How do you stop Baltimore? Usually it's Lamar Jackson. Turns out Lamar Jackson is not going to be playing on Sunday. Yeah, so like I said, they're in the playoffs already. They've won the division. They can't get any further up in the standings, so they're just going to take it easy, even against the Steelers. They're still going to play hard. No guarantee you can win this thing, because when Pittsburgh plays Baltimore, people forget about the records. It doesn't matter if you're playing football, first string, second string, third string, or even running the hot dog stand. These two teams do not like each other. They will play with everything they have. Lamar Jackson does not really play very well against the Steelers. His record is not that great. But to be honest with you, I'm glad he's not out there. So hopefully that makes it easier. So speaking of quarterbacks, is Mason Rudolph our guy now? Right? Well, Mitch Trubisky didn't do it, and we know that Kenny Pickett been out for some time with messed up ankle. He was sort of ready to go against Seattle. They decided to wait a second, let Mason Rudolph go. He's had a couple of really good games. Will he get a third good game? Let's find out. So Kenny Pickett, he's going to be back up just in case. And if the Steelers do make the playoffs, that's going to be an interesting question. Who's our quarterback going to be? Because the Pittsburgh sports media can be somewhat, what am I looking for? Manic depressing sometimes. They lose a couple of games, like when New England and Arizona, fire everybody. They win a couple games, suddenly we're Super Bowl bound, right? So remember, it's a long season, man. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, but you cannot deny Mason Rudolph's had a good couple of games. Kind of ironic considering you boot him off the field a couple times back in 2019, but hey, live and learn, right? So here's what the Steelers have to do to make the playoffs, right from the NFL website. I'll be happy to, check if we're splitting with the Ravens. I'll be happy to check the division record, even the conference record as far as I go. This other stuff, hey, they got people that pay for that, right? So let them deal with it. So Steelers against the Ravens, playing on Saturday. That's kind of strange. Here's what the Steelers need. They need to win the game. Figured that out, right? Steeler win and a Buffalo loss. Pittsburgh's in as a wild card. Pittsburgh wins, Jacksonville loses or tie. Hey, they're in the playoffs. Pittsburgh wins, Houston, Indianapolis tie. Okay, we get in. If Pittsburgh has a tie and Jacksonville loses and somebody wins in Houston, Indianapolis, Steelers are in the playoffs, or you have a Jacksonville loss, Denver win, somehow Indy and Houston doesn't end in a tie, and of course, Steelers have to win in order to get in. I don't know how much they pay people to figure this out, but it's probably not enough. And before I run off screaming, yes, the XFL and USFL have merged. I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic. I wish they had 16 teams, and I wish the Pittsburgh Maulers were one of them. But hey, they're going to have a great season. It's going to start on March the 30th. The teams there running from left to right. We've got the San Antonio Brahmas, the St. Louis Battlehawks, the Washington Defenders, and the defending XFL champion Arlington Renegades. On the USFL side, we've got the defending two-time USFL champion Birmingham Stallions, the Memphis Showboats, the Houston Gamblers, and the Michigan Panthers. It's going to be a fantastic league. There's going to be more information coming out concerning rules and how they're going to schedule and everything. But I do know one thing. The first game will be between defending champion Arlington, the other defending champion Birmingham. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I'm a big fan of alternative and spring football. I hope they do fantastic. I hope eventually they'll re-expand and include those other teams that didn't make the merger. Hey, let's have fun. Play the game. That's what it's all about. Well, time for Mr. H to run off because I've got things to do. I don't think they're very important, but, hey, everyone has their opinion, right? Have yourself a great day. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm even on Instagram. If you get bored scrolling through your phone, Mr. H History Rescue on Instagram, I'm there too. So have a great day, and I will see you next time. Das vidanya.